awesome. I mean, there's really cool stuff. And as we go, if you have questions, ask them. All right. That's why I decided to do this. That's why I'm here. I know that's why Neil's here. If you have questions, ask away. We can go anywhere with this. I got all the time. When you guys leave, I'm staying. So I'm not on a time crunch here. So if you have questions, ask. Okay. So we got the PowerPoint up here, and I always start it. How many? Just raise your hand if you have zero PRI experience. Amazing. The PRI comes down, and we all know this now. It's the zone of apposition, and it's the asymmetrical diaphragm, right? So it all comes back to the ZOA, and the ZOA is. This is the 6th week doing it, and I always do it. I should bring it up, right? But this is the ZOA here. Okay, and we have the suboptimal way on the far right, and then the optimal ZOA right here in the middle. And as you can see, the optimal ZOA has a much better dome to this diaphragm, and this one has a much worse dome of the diaphragm. And essentially, everything that you do in PRI is going to be coming back to that middle picture. We are trying to restore that middle picture. And the other thing to take note of here is that the hip, the pelvis on the optimal ZOA, I was going to say, I never know why they have the picture on the left. It seems like the same thing, but sorry. So if you look at the pelvis on the middle picture and the pelvis on the far right picture, the pelvis on the far right picture is a little more anteriorly tipped, and this leads to an extended spine, ribs that are hyperinflated. When we breathe in, when we're sucking air in, we're trying to get into that suboptimal ZOA situation, right? When we breathe air out, we're trying to bring it into the optimal ZOA situation. The problem is when, specifically in the left AIC pattern, which is the prime. Does everybody have at least some understanding of what the left AIC pattern is?
Like an airline. So on the left side, I can turn it around also. The left side, forward and external rotation. Forward and external, and you notice it points everything. So if I come forward with the left, the sacrum and left ilium go orient. Actually, the whole thing orients to the right.
Right.
So it's flex and external rotation.
Exactly. So what you'll end up having is you'll have on the left side, you'll have the suboptimal ZOA, which would be like swing phase of gait, right? And then optimal ZOA would be on the right side. You're in a state of exhalation on the right, the ribs are down. You're in a state of inhalation on the left, the ribs are up. No problems there. That's phenomenal. We want to be there. We're standing on our right leg. We like to do that. The problem is we like to do it a little too much. So what happens is when we try to shift back over to the left side, we're so stuck in that left AIC pattern. We're so stuck on that right leg that we don't have the ability to shift it back over onto the left leg. We end up still in some variation of this, and we've kind of manufactured our ability to get onto the left side.
So if you're on your right foot, you're in right stance. And that's how the pelvis should be, not an issue. The issue occurs if you go to the left foot.
Right.
And you're still in rightward pelvic orientation instead of that. That's as simple as it is.
Exactly.
You should go from here to here. It should alternate, but we don't. When you're patterned, you stay on the right side even when you're on the left side. Does that make sense? If you don't get to this pelvic position with opposite rib cage, directional rib cage, you're not really on your left leg. Does that make sense? Okay.
So, and all of that essentially stems from the asymmetrical diaphragm, and there's a lot of asymmetries that are going to play a role here. But we're going to stick to the contents of your thorax, which is your visceral organs, specifically your liver, being on the right side, not being on your left side, right? So it sits higher on the right side than it does on the left, and because of that, shortens the fibers, much easier in a much easier state to contract than it is on the left side. So when it sits up a little higher. I believe the attachment's thicker on the right side. It's just a much easier. So every time that it's just a bigger dome on the right side. So as we breathe, approximately 20,000 times a day, we always just take this little twist to the right. right? And just over time, I'm 31 years old, map it out, 20,000 times 365 times 31. Actually, I'm very intrigued on how much that is.
That's a lot of breath.
That's a lot of breaths, but that's a lot of twisting to the right. So we have this constant struggle, we're constant uphill battle of us trying to shift it back over to the left and just balance that out. And so that's really what we're looking at here. And as a result of that, by that twist over here, you get that state of exhalation on the right, the optimal ZOA. Pelvis is in a nice, I don't even want to say that. A pelvis is in a more of a posteriorly rotated state, and the ribs are down.
So there's the right ribs, internally rotated ribs on the right, so everything is here.
Yep.
But that would also, I'm not going to get that. Internal rotation on the right, external rotation on the left.
Yep.
So you have rib flare on the left, while the ribs on the right side are in a state of exhalation, overly stable, because it's stabilizing your right side, so your left leg can go through the air and step. So you're just stuck in this overactivity of the whole right side, creating stabilization and never relaxing, because you never fully get to the left.
Yep.
Never lets go.
And on the left side, ribs are up, pelvis is anteriorly tipped, etc. But let's stay there for right now. And we're in a state of inhalation. That's where the air wants to go. So and we just become biased. We've strengthened that pattern so much. You know, when we lay down, we're not necessarily laying down in a neutral pattern. There's a lot of things that we'll see as you travel through the PRI world that you'll notice that we lay down in a left axis pattern or you lay down in a left axis pattern. You will just always be biasing yourself to that side because that's where you're strongest. That's where it's most comfortable to breathe and just live your life. I've recently started noticing that when I go to sleep, I am most comfortable. This is just the worst part about knowing PRI. It's just like the constant analysis of yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Like I'm trying to go to sleep and I'm like, and my head is like tilted to the left, and I'm just like,
is my airway open?
damn it! Like, oh my! And I'm trying to go to sleep and I'm trying to correct that, and then you like move it back and you're like, this isn't comfortable, and then you're like, but you got to deal with it. Then you're just like, Sean, you're comfortable. You feel good, man. Relaxed. Just go to sleep, man. And then once that box is open, forget it. So I have no idea where I was going with that, but anyway, that's what it all comes down to. It all comes down to the fact that we bias ourselves onto that right side, and we're having a really hard time getting to the left. So theoretically speaking, and when we're doing corrective exercises, when we're doing training, I think PRI people get a little too focused on the fact that like we got to be in these corrective areas and stuff, but these clinical style exercises, but training should have the exact same bias. If you're training somebody in the gym, you're just understanding that this exists, right? And then you're biasing your program. Like you going into you sit in front of the computer to make this program, and you have a biased opinion of how you're going to program these exercises, because you're understanding that this person in front of you has a liver on the right side of their body. I think it's a fair assumption. I guess it doesn't always exist. There is situations where they call it in situ inversus. Not positive on the name of that, but that is when the organs are flipped. So I guess that might be a question to add to the intake, where your liver at, right? I think that might be something that maybe needs to be asked. I've never asked that. I've always just assumed that it's on the right side, but it is possible to be on the other side. But when you're sitting down a program, this is what's in your head. This is what's in my head. Whenever I created programs for the athletes that I've worked with, that's what I'm looking at. Like I'm understanding that this is what's existing in their body, and I need to create opposition to that pattern. And I think the other thing that I think is really, we all a couple PTs, all trainers at some level dealing with like a strength and conditioning program. Everybody, are you doing that at all?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even PT is just a different level of strength and conditioning. It's all the same, right? But when you get these guys in the gym who want to just get in, get yoked, or anybody's look, it was 55 degrees the other day. All right, people starting to sniff the beach bodies. So it's about time to get that. It's about time to get that fired up, right?
I was in there.
Yeah, I still am. Jeez, are you kidding me?
I joined Red Row a couple weeks ago. I'm in there.
Yeah. So So that's these people who are generating a lot of tone, right? And if they're generating a lot of quad tone because they do whatever the heck they do in the gym, like that's okay, I get that. But understand that now a 90-90 is an unbelievable exercise. But what's that going to do for Shaquille O'Neal, right? How much opposition tone do you need for his anterior chain to produce onto his posterior chain to produce a adequate amount of opposition to get him into a good position? You're gonna need a pretty good amount, right? I think I think PRI really does operate in the optimal world. In a perfect world setting, that's I think ideally if you're trying to get somebody neutral, you're not gonna work with an athlete. You're gonna work with some. You might have to tell the athlete like, dude, you gotta stop playing your sport because I'm gonna try to get you neutral. You gotta stop dancing on Broadway, right? It's not realistic, and that's where you have to just use your understanding of PRI, the situation, and just play the cards that you're dealt. Like when I worked in the NBA, this was the routine. This is a real road trip that we had. Practice in LA, okay? Whatever the heck that entailed. We get on the plane. We immediately flew to New Orleans. After the next night, we played against the Pelicans in New Orleans. After the game, we got on the plane and we flew to Chicago. We played the next night in Chicago. After the game, we flew immediately to Toronto. We had a day off in Toronto. The following day, we played against the Raptors in Toronto. After the game, we flew to Memphis. We played the next night in Memphis, and then after the game, we flew all the way back to LA, right? How am I getting anybody on that team neutral under that circumstance? Like, I think I spent more time on the airplane than I did in my home during that time, just because it's the way the life is, and it's just a matter of understanding that neutrality isn't all that realistic in that world, because the neurological implications of that, sleep deprivation. These guys eat nothing but Doritos, and you put salads out for them, and they're just going to order their own cheeseburgers, and like that's the world that they're living in. And I just need to do the best that I can with that situation. So, that's ultimately, when it comes to training, like, it's just understanding these principles and stuff, understanding that this asymmetrical diaphragm, this asymmetrical body exists. There's these patterns that are falling off, but we've strengthened these patterns, and now we just need to create the opposition for that. And then it's just who you got in front of you, right? Questions there?
Just curious, on the, are guys looking for treatment before a game, or are they just like, we had a game last night, I'm resting until I'm playing tonight?
Well, I mean, it depends. I think there's all sorts of different guys, right? You got the guys who are always hurt. I feel so bad, and go out and drop 40. Then you got the guys who are never hurt. Under no circumstance am I going to be injured, and that's that. So it really just depends on the guy, I think. And the other thing to consider from my perspective was that I was the strength and conditioning coach. Now, granted, I had a huge PRI background, licensed massage therapist, right? So I have a rehabilitation background. They didn't want to see me ever for rehab or anything that bothered them. I remember getting in on some guy in the weight room. One of our guys had a shoulder problem or something. I was about to just flip in and do some ART real quick, right? And he was like, no, like I'll go to the training room for that. Which was, I get it. When I worked for the Diamondbacks, it was the complete opposite. So interchangeable, true teamwork. Could have been either or. Like that was the what's the word I'm looking for? Like the model that they set up. Like that's just what the hell is the word I'm thinking of? No, culture. Yes. Man,
That was one of those tough words to remember.
you know what? They did cover that in my journalism background.
Can you use culture in a sentence in class? I would know.
Oh God. So they did. That was the culture they set up. But with those guys, like I was not a rehab guy, So like for me, it was just purely strength and conditioning, purely fitness. And like if somebody was gonna come in for, if they had knee pain, like it's like we're talking like playing tricks, getting guys to do stuff without them knowing they're doing it. And like I did, that's the name of the game, pro sports. If anybody ever works with pro athletes, that's the name of the game. That's just see if you can sneak it in. It's a fun game to play. High stakes, high stakes. But so that's was there another question somewhere up here?
Yeah, going back to the topic of geriatrics, what's your experience with PRI, the older population? Do you feel like you're ever going to get them neutral? You know, they've had this tone probably for years and years and years and years. Are you expecting them to get their right arm to internally rotate and all that stuff?
I think you have to consider the fact that's definitely a possibility. I was at an event yesterday and I saw an older lady and she had extreme thoracic kyphosis. Right. I was actually talking to my dad and he was just like he's so proud of his son. He said, "You got that right." And I was like, oh man, I don't know. Like that's a lot of time spent under that tension. From a neurological perspective, so like every time like we're in these patterns, right, we're producing these neocortical associations in our brain that are and over time it just builds and it gets stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, and under that microscope you're saying you're going to have to spend an adequate amount of time to oppose that current, because you can't erase a memory in the brain. You can only create a stronger connection. So you have to spend an adequate amount of time to produce the opposition to that, and then you want to talk about the soft tissue fibers that have formed over top of it, reinforcing that pattern. I mean, I'm not super well versed in what would happen from a bony standpoint, but I would imagine there's something that happens in that situation. So I think for the geriatric population, I would. Off the top of my head, I've worked very little, but I would say that it would definitely be something where neutrality is further away, right? Maybe a less likely scenario. Anybody else have experience there?
I've only had a couple experiences with like older than 65. One of them was my aunt, and I think you have more of a lifetime of injury and insult, whether it's purely physical, psychological, a lot of different things. I remember if they're growing up in the 50s like my aunt did, they used to just tear teeth out left and right,
Sure.
whatever. So she had teeth pulled, and I know because I did have a tongue depressor between the teeth trick, and she got this range of motion, took it out, let her teeth touch, neck didn't move. Mm-hmm. So those teeth are not changing at this point, but she would constantly get pain sitting. I tell the story because it's really just illustrative. She gets a lot of neck pain because she has her own business with her husband. They have a small business, which is very stressful, and she's on the computer a lot, and she constantly complains about neck pain. So obviously she's ungrounded because she's always sitting, and sitting just kills the body in my estimation. And so what I did, and I was like, Diane, I don't know if it's going to work, but you can try this because I've with other people. Just whenever you start to feel it too much, stand up, get on your left leg. So remember what we can't do. We're stuck like, we're essentially, in just the frontal plane at least, we're stuck like this. We're on our right side. She's getting too right-sided from her life and sitting too much and just having these teeth that are causing overactivity of the neck. So I said, Diane, just do this. Put your left foot slightly behind you. And this is her skeleton. Bring the left hand down. Feel your left heel. Now you're in left stance. Pain goes away. Her neck hurts because she's so right-sided, the neck can't turn off. Put her onto the other side, that neck finally relaxes. It's not going to stay because their teeth still touch, but at least it lasts for long enough that she feels relief. And she came back on Thanksgiving. She's like, Neil, I do that. Whenever I'm in pain, I do that thing you told me to do, and I had completely forgotten what I had told her to do. And I was like, what did I tell you to do? Because I definitely wasn't an exercise. And I just stand on my left side. And she feels it. So I just put her in left stance. I make sure that her left knee is slightly bent, unlocked. She's feeling her left heel. She brings her left hand lower. She's in left stance, and she just breathes. It enables the right side, at least temporarily, to relax, and that's all she needs. And then 5 hours later, it's probably going to go back because now she's sitting and typing again. But at least temporarily. So I think there's a lot of what you can do with older people might be just re-education in a sense. Give them those references of left heel, right arch, left posterior mediastinum when they're sitting. Try to kind of sit to the side a little bit on the left. I'm sure that works with a lot of people no matter what. But at least you could always try stuff like that. I don't know if you've gotten to that point in the PRI education, but left heel and right arch are big deals. Training and just the typical PRI stuff also. And I just want to say about the training, like if you, I remember someone asked me, do you ever do any normal stuff? And that just, to me, it just means that he's not seeing the big picture. If I know that all humans have a tendency to do this more than this, why would I not take that into account in my training programs? I know you're going to want to go to your right side. You start lifting heavy weights, you're going to lose that zone of apposition on the left. You're probably going to switch over to the right side, at least a little bit. So just keep that into mind. You can always just bias your exercises just a little bit by arm placement, by sensing your heel. There's a million things you can do just to get a little bit more of this than you would in normal life, because everything's going to want to put you back into this. So it's just a sense of understanding how the body exists in space and time, and just adjusting appropriately. Just that's pretty much all it is for training things. You don't have to do special PRI exercises. It's just what are the concepts? What are we looking at? And then just bias the left side a little bit more than the right side, because everything else during the course of your day is going to want to bias the right side rather than the left side.
Is that good? So yeah, I think the one thing I kept thinking about when Neil was talking, you had a question?
Yeah, quick question.
Do it.
What's the physiological explanation behind reference centers? Is it center
Great.
pressure or?
The
I think
physiological?
I think there's a lot of different ways that you can think about it. In one sense, you're just, your brain in a sense is almost unaware of that area of the body. You have to bring awareness to it to feel it again, which will enable you to have the proper muscle activation. So you could try to do leg curls with your left hamstring. Like, I know we need left hamstrings, yet it might not work because you haven't incorporated the ground. And we live on ground, and it's that pressure of your foot onto the ground and the ground pressing up into your foot that's kind of giving your brain the proper feedback to when to activate muscles.
The way I think about it is neuro. Like I'm admittedly very biased towards neurology and that side of this whole thing, right? So the way every time the brain gets an input, there's some neurological connection to that input. It could be, like if you guys walk in here, I think we gave this example the other day. If a guy comes just pounding through that door right now, wielding a chainsaw and a machete, we're going to get pretty rattled, right? And because we're going to see that, and this is what's interesting about that is when that person comes through the door, all we see is light, right? We see a collection of light. All that we sense from an auditory standpoint is vibrating air molecules, right? That's all that we have seen. That is all that we have sensed, right? And then because I've lived for 31 years. I have grown to know that a man wielding a chainsaw and a machete equals bad, right? So if that guy comes in, that collection of light goes into my head, and my brain goes, oh, I know what that collection of light is. That is a chainsaw and a machete, and that look in his eye. Yep, I also remember where that is from a time, whatever, when I was a kid, and yeah, and now all of a sudden my reaction, the output that my body's going to produce is going to be extension, fight or flight. Holy hell, I'm so scared, right? So from the same standpoint, it is the reference center side of it is the same thing. So when I feel my left heel, when I sense that, what happens in my brain, right? What is my brain? When that input comes in? What's the context? What have I applied? What context have I applied to that sensation? And a lot of PRI, which is really cool, is the fact that you have very little because you've stayed off of that left heel for so long. You stayed off of that right arch for so long. So there's not a lot of context there. So there's some room to grow. So when you sense that, when I sense, so for example, what makes crappy weightlifting so scary is because I might feel my left heel, and now what am I associating my left heel with? Like a really sympathetic environment or something, right? As opposed to when I get my left heel, I want to sense my left hamstring and my left adductor and all this stuff, and I'm creating context, and then it goes back to you can't erase a memory, you can't erase context, you can only create a stronger association and this might be stuff that you guys are coming across in your research, and it's
a pattern.
Yeah, it's now it's training, right? Let's train this pattern, let's train this input, but that's really what it is. Like you're just training your body to with the reference side of it. That's all you're trying to do is trying to unlock a pattern, unlock neocortical context, that's what it means from a reference center standpoint. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so according to PRI, is the optimal pattern locomotion? Is that what they're trying to get at?
Yeah.
Walk-
Gait.
walking and breathing.
Yeah.
Reciprocal alternative.
Yeah. And they'll say so neutral in under the context of PRI is not a good posture is not a single static position. It is the ability to move in and out of positions. So like good posture, like this could be outstanding posture, right? But only if I can also come here and here and here and here and here. Like how many different positions can you get yourself into? How limited are you, right? That is what neutrality is. That is what good posture is under this umbrella. Does it sound good? Questions? Wonderful. So the next thing we'll talk about is the infrasternal angle, and I wanted to address this on this day because
I saw a video about this on Instagram yesterday. Someone
really
was bench pressing and talking. Someone
about
said
the
something about
infrasternal
the
angle.
I don't know. I didn't really.
So, I've noticed that it has gained quite a bit of hype on the social media worlds, and by all intents and purposes, go like worthy hype because it is a good test, right? And if you don't know, the infrasternal angle is literally just that the arrow's pointing to it, the angle of your ribs, the way they're closed off, and the way you measure it is you just literally go in and you take your thumbs and you just jam them up in there right on that angle and decide whether it's wide or narrow or just unimpressive, just unnoticeable, normal infrasternal angle. Now the let's see what I got up here for this. Perfect. This is not actually PRI, okay? It's PRI-ish. Okay, it has some bang for your buck. If I'm a personal trainer, a strength and conditioning coach, I'm in on this because I don't have a lot of time. So the way my clinic is set up upstairs is I see everybody for 2 hours, right? And I go through about 50 some odd 60 assessments, and I have the luxury of seeing somebody for 2 hours that David here does not have. Right, and so I can say infrasternal angle, get out of here. We'll do it the proper way, right? We'll go by the book here. So because the reason that this is not PRI is because this only tells you a piece of the puzzle, right? I think in the training, strength conditioning world, the people that are using it, and I'm not saying it's a bad exercise or a bad test to use. It is by all means a good test. But the reason that it is not PRI is because it only tells you a very small piece of the puzzle. If you're using this in conjunction with 50 other tests, all right. But if you're using it in conjunction with 2 other tests, what have you found, right? Like, if somebody has a wide infrasternal angle, what does that tell you? Anybody know what that tells you?
In the inhalation pattern?
Yeah. Okay. Great. What does that tell you about the foot?
That's where everything is so fascinating.
Right, and now you can make some assumptions based off of the foot, based on what you're seeing here, but you can't tell me what's going on with the foot by looking at this, right? Fair, and that's why no one test is going to be like the king. It's the entire assessment process. But I want to emphasize that I would truly use this test if I was in a setting where I did not have, like when I worked in LA, they did not give me 2 hours there, but you got 10 minutes to make this happen, my man. And okay, well maybe it's time for an infrasternal angle, right? So the reason, man, see, I get ahead of myself here. This is not PRI, but it is practical, right? Wide equals hyperinflation, like we just mentioned. A wide infrasternal angle means that you are hyperinflated, right? You have that suboptimal ZOA on both sides. You are in a state of inhalation, right? A narrow infrasternal angle, what does that mean?
Super inflated.
You know what? It honestly could. But so, you know what? I think I have the video here. audio is brutal. Can everybody hear that, or is that just not even close? Can you guys hear that down there? All right.
Visceral and obstetric osteopathy by Carol Stone, and it's looking at the relationship between the diaphragm and the lower rib cage in regards to making comparison to an umbrella. And so I have an umbrella, and I have an infrasternal angle, as you can see, measured right there. So this is going to be the lower rib cage, and this is where the false ribs come up and meet the sternum as representation. So if we consider the normal physiological activity of the diaphragm, as the diaphragm descends, because of its attachment on the lower rib cage, the ribs are going to swing up in a bucket handle action. So I'm going to simulate it dropping down. So this is the diaphragm going down and lifting up, and therefore you see this wide infrasternal angle. So that is a bucket handle up position, as we would normally have with a breath in, and then as we breathe out, the bucket handle goes back down. Now, if I am hyperinflated, where I have a descended diaphragm, and that would result in a wide infrasternal angle presentation. So this might be a compensatory strategy that our patients may be using that limits their respiratory excursion and therefore limits mobility. Now, if I have a scenario where the diaphragm can continue to descend, so as the diaphragm goes down, it would normal bucket handle our ribs up, give us this wide infrasternal angle. But there are scenarios, so for instance, in the pelvis, if the pelvis is in a position to receive pressure, the diaphragm will continue to descend as it pushes the guts down. And so if I can continue to push the guts down, what happens is the diaphragm picks up leverage to pull in on itself, and now I have a narrow infrasternal angle. So that's how you get a narrow one. And so depending on the presentation of this compensatory breathing strategy, this will help me determine what my interventions will be to restore this full respiratory excursion of the up and the down pump handle action of the rib cage, so that I can get a normal respiratory excursion.
Questions with that? So when we have a narrow infrasternal angle, this is why it's quote not PRI, right? Because if you're only looking, if you're saying like I'm going to do adduction drop and infrasternal angle for the upper body, right? Adduction drop for the lower, infrasternal angle for the top. You do whatever, you do the adduction drop, you get what you get, and then you do that, and you get a narrow infrasternal angle, and you're like, oh, you know what? He's not really that inflated, right? So maybe he's all right in the upper body. All that you may have indicated is that, well, really all that you've noticed is that his ribs are not super externally rotated at that position. It could be in a position like Bill says, where his pelvis is able to receive that pressure. It's that belly breathing. See, people get like really big bellies when they belly breathe. That's what you're looking at. You're looking at the guts, the contents of your upper body, your organs and stuff just being pushed down. Your pelvis is able to receive that pressure, as opposed to the pressure expanding where we want it to in the rib cage, and that's why it doesn't work alone, right? You're just not going to. Now, I do think you can make some pretty fair assumptions, like I said, from a training standpoint, strength standpoint, okay, like I'm with you, but you just have to know if you're going to do it, you have to know that it isn't by the book PRI. Right? It doesn't give you the entire answers. And I think that's where the discussion on what happens when you're a trainer and you're not given this opportunity to have 2 hours with somebody and to really sit down and go through the entire assessment protocol. That's where you're saying, okay, I got to find the most bang for my buck here. I gotta do the infrasternal, I gotta do the adduction drop, and then maybe you pick one or two other things that is fairly easy for you to get through.
Does everyone know what the adduction drop test is? It's like the standard to check whether the pelvis is forward on the left side. The standard pattern. So the adduction drop, you're testing the left leg's ability to adduct. If it's the pelvis forward on the left, which almost everybody will be in the beginning, the left leg will not adduct. So that's kind of like the standard first test that everyone does, because you always want to restore the pelvis position first. So adduction drop is always checking to see whether the pelvis is forward on the, if they're in the left AIC pattern. So if they're in that very normal left pelvis forward, everything oriented to the right position, that's so familiar to everybody. And that's the one test that almost everybody does, probably.
Right.
Maybe not correctly.
I think in
But
my
at least an
experience,
attempt.
that's most people, that's what they're doing. That's the adduction drop. I mean, that's the one they show at the courses all the time. And, by all means, it's a great test.
For good
But
reason.
yeah. So if you do have somebody who ends up with a wider external angle, like the way I want to think about it is, if you have somebody who's in that heavy state of upper body inhalation, very externally rotated, very extended, what you want to do is you want to get their ribs moving. A lot of overhead style stuff. Lat hangs from a bar, and what you're looking to do is you're hanging off this bar, and then their ribs are going to really come up, and then they're going to exhale, and their ribs are going to start coming down via their abs, which is you want. You'll get a huge lat stretch, a huge pec stretch, and like when I'm queuing that up, I'm saying just feel them moving. Just appreciate that your ribs are mobile now, and they're moving down with your with every breath with every exhalation that you take. And now the key is, like, if you really want to be a stud about it, you keep those ribs down as you inhale again. And now that is where you can get tricky, because the reason that their ribs probably came up in the first place, I don't know if this is the reason, but one of the big reasons here is that your rib cage, your thorax gets restricted. It gets really tight, and there's nowhere for that air to go. That's why belly breathing isn't so great, because you're allowing your intercostals and your, these muscles that are supposed to inhibit to allow your rib cage to expand. You're allowing that to get really tight and constricted, and you're not allowing that airflow to come that 360 degrees that we're always looking for. Airflow, I should be able to put my hand anywhere on your rib cage, and you should be able to expand my hand out with inhalation. That's good respiration. Just belly breathing isn't getting it. I'm appreciating the fact that you're trying to get me away from my neck, but as soon as I'm starting to play athletics, when I take an inhalation, I've lost all control of my core. Now that when I get out of breath, I'm going to have to find more places to get that air, so my neck will kick in, lift those upper ribs so that I can get some more space for that airflow to come in. And that's when you start getting neck stuff, start getting jaw stuff. Now you're playing with fire, some real fire. That's where you get into a point where you got your work cut out for you. Okay, Neil's the perfect example and resource for what happens when it starts going above the neck.
It's
right?
not fun.
Not fun. So if you got somebody with wide infrasternal angle, they need to exhale. They need to get those ribs moving. Okay, what's up?
Would you cue like a hard exhale with that, or like kind of like the pocket glass type of exhale?
You know what? It's so it's a good question. Everybody's been so different with how they. Some people can't. It was last week where we had a really hard time getting somebody to just exhale sitting here, and like I'm recently coming across a lot of people that are having a hard time like understanding what the exhale is. Even when like cued, where you say, okay, exhale all your air, and then it's like keep going, and then more and more and more. I always say you should be spitting up air at the end, like literally. That's when I know you've gotten all your air out. So the one thing to consider is that when you give a firm exhale, that's sympathetic, right? That's a sympathetic output. And we're not necessarily looking for that. PRI isn't necessarily looking for that. Now, not necessarily saying that that's going to end up being a bad thing, and it's like a situation for you where you're at equinox and somebody's going to come in who's not just looking to be able to move reciprocally well, which I would imagine is the vast majority of people that come in there. You might need to, because personally, I think the exhale is more important than like if that's the only way they're going to get the exhale. Let's start there, right? Let's be real people. We're living in the real world here. Let's start there. Let's worry about the exhale, and then we'll work our way to the long, controlled exhale. So I think ideally you're cueing them to fog the glass, right? It's not always going to be ideal, right? So I think this is going to be very. I think the same deal as what we're talking about with how are you going to apply the infrasternal or pure eye testing when you can only do 4 tests. We're going to do the best with what we got here. We're going to play the cards, and if that's what it's got to be, that's great. We're just at a different starting point, right?
I would say fogging the glass was the first cue that really worked well for me. But also when you have them hum and feel the vibration, say try to get your exhalation from there, because a lot of people try to blow with their mouth and their neck, which is not what you want. Helping them feel having either your own hands, if you're legally allowed to do that, it's just ridiculous. But that's why I went to massage school. So I could place my hands on someone's ribs. So helping them exhale, because they don't know what it feels like to exhale, because no one ever thought. Ask someone where they feel their weight on their feet. What? Like, you can ask them so many questions they've never considered in their life, but they don't know what an exhalation feels like because, well, they are exhaling. Like, of course I'm breathing, I'm exhaling. But if you guide their ribs down, like, oh, that's what it's supposed to feel like. That helps a lot. Putting your hand underneath their lower back on the left side. You feel my hand? Yeah. Okay. Kind of squish my hand when you exhale. That's a reference. It gives them awareness of what they should be doing. That's why those references are so valuable to create a new pattern, or to create a new pattern for them, a new reference. That's what it is. Just giving them guidelines, like the stars. That's how they figured out where they were in the ocean, and they didn't have all these amazing maps. It locates you in a sense. It gives you a sense of where you need to be.
That was deep, man.
I'm philosophy.
Wow.
Church here.
Oh my God.
This on Sunday.
Yeah.
What are those? The sextant. What's the thing that changed navigation completely?
I think that is it. Sextant?
That's what
Something like that.
they could figure out where they were and relate because of the stars, and they have these angles and they could map themselves. Instead of just rely, it just gives you a sense of purpose and direction.
Right. So so the next step to this test would be that if you have a narrow infrasternal angle, you're reaching straight out, right? And the idea behind that is like, so you could potentially have a narrow infrasternal or a narrow-ish infrasternal angle if you are upper body neutral, right? But I think for the sake of this situation, we are assuming that you are not neutral, right? So if in this situation they have a narrow-ish or even like the 90-degree infrasternal angle, and their upper and their lower body, you've done maybe some apical expansion. Personally, I think the apical expansion, if you guys want to test, do you guys know what apical expansion is? The apical expansion test is. Anybody not know what that is? Okay. So the apical expansion test is they're laying on their back, and I'm going to have them inhale through their nose, and when they exhale, I'm going to take their ribs, I'm going to guide them down, right? I am their abs. I am going to take over for their abs. I'm going to push them down and see if when they inhale again, I can hold this down and get air in on this side. And then I'm going to flip it and I'm going to do it on the other side. I'm going to guide them down on the exhale, give them a little 2-3 second pause, and then inhale. Can you breathe on one side? Can you exhale on one side and inhale on the other? And do the same thing on both sides, right? So in the left AIC pattern, they'll say, I'm going to have a hard time holding you down on this left side and getting air here because I'm restricted here, but this is where all my air is going. On the opposite side, I should be able to hold you down pretty easily here and get air in on this left side. So that's the apical expansion. I think that's the go-to. I think if I was going to do a test for the upper body, I'm doing apical expansion because I want to see where your air, where's there room for your airflow to go? Because ultimately, all of this stuff revolves around the manipulation of your airflow. Is there enough room on your right side to divert air away from your left side? Because if there is not enough room on your right side for air to go, your left abs can never work because your body would prefer you to breathe than have a good ZOA. So if there's no air here, those left abs will always give in when you're inhaling because it needs air to go. On the flip side, so if you have somebody who is like, I just can't hold that in while I'm inhaling, right? I can't maintain left abs as I inhale. Well, you got to look at their right side because that's probably really restricted. They're not getting any airflow. It's so constricted. There's not enough airflow for them to get air in on that right side. You open that chamber up. Now all of a sudden that left side will stay down like that because it's not a strength thing. It's a fact that I need to breathe. It's a survival thing. I need to breathe. So when we're talking about somebody who has a narrow infrasternal angle, we're talking about opening their chambers. When I say chambers, I'm thinking anterior. I'm thinking posterior mediastinum. That's a lot of reaching with the serratus to pull that rib cage back on the scapula to open up that posterior mediastinum. I'm thinking a little bit of lateral as well. And the one thing that I absolutely want to emphasize on the posterior mediastinum, when we're talking like right behind the shoulder blade, the scap. When you feel that, you know it.
Yeah, you know it.
If the person's over there like, yeah, I think I got it, you don't have it. I did not know. I did not know what it was. I was working an event this past summer, and I was sitting on my massage table. I don't know why I did this. I was sitting at this event, and I turned like this, maybe just trying to like crack my back or something, and I just took a breath, and my left posterior mediastinum expanded. That was posterior. I had never felt that in my life. I was under the impression, I was like, yeah, no, I can feel it. It's there. It's there. No. It is like plain as day obvious when that happens.
And that is a reference.
Yeah.
Now he knows.
Exactly.
That's what it should feel
Yeah,
like. It's a reference.
exactly. So when I go through that exercise, I know what I'm looking for. I know when I have it and when I don't. And it's really drives me up the freaking wall, because when you're doing it with somebody and you're trying to explain this to them, they just never know it until they know it. Like they'll be like, I have it, and you're like, no, I just don't think you do, because it feels like you know, like the spot massage therapist where everybody's just like, it's just like, can you just massage here for the full hour, like right here, this spot. It literally feels like that is the exact spot that you're releasing, right? It is the like pinpointed. That's the spot. That's what I'm releasing. So when you expand that posterior mediastinum, that's the spot that you're hitting. And you want to talk about when you go to a massage place, and next time you're giving a Swedish massage, and they're like, I just, I know, because you do that every week, right? And they're like, yeah, this is the spot. Can you just get in there? Just be like, hey, hold on a sec. You just sit up for me and just reach. Just reach. They'll tip you so handsomely.
Nothing will release a muscle better than like,
But that's the thing. Like that. Like if somebody's coming back every week, well, you're not doing anything. You're not doing anything. Right? That's the answer. Open up their chambers. That's somebody who can't get air back there. So if they can't get air back there, the PRI gate model is like, oh yes, dude, hell yeah. It's like one's down and the other one needs to be. Is that right? No. Like one is, if you're down here, you're redirecting air back here. So in order to, did I do that right?
Yeah.
Okay. What? It feels wrong to me.
Well, if you're in right stance, so just compare it to, so it's down in the front.
Ah, yeah. I see what I'm doing. I see. I screwed
It's
up.
open back
I
here.
was just, yeah. You're right.
It's open in
Right.
front anterior,
Right.
front anterior. Anterior closed and left posterior. You always have to look diagonals and front to back. 'Cause
Right.
everything is just opposites.
So when we're down here, we're open in the back, and we're just trying to restrict. So this is that. I'm looking at it from like the upper view. One is down and one is up, right? We're standing on our right leg, and then we just need to flip it back here to go into that left stance. And the only way I can never get there. I can't get there unless I can get air back here. I just can't get there. It's just not. I don't do it. And we have kids. Okay, when I have a kid, I'm gonna ask the doctor, say, when can I start like doing stuff with them? It's like, what do you mean? I'm like adduction drop. He's like, what do you? Do I need to call somebody? But like, I actually want to know if they're like, if you put your hand on a baby's back. I have no idea. I'm like super curious. If you put your hand on a baby's back, is that thing gonna just expand like a lot?
No. There's a privy video about that.
There is.
Yes, there is.
I've seen
It was
no
written by an
videos.
osteopath. And they're talking about how, because he talks about how the last place to solidify, I don't know. Is that
But no,
the-
yeah, they say they do it in the front.
In the sternum.
But what about the back?
Well, they're talking about the babies don't have enough muscular opposition up in the rib cage, so they have to belly breathe.
Okay,
But we
okay.
shouldn't belly breathe because
Okay.
we're not babies.
Yeah.
So I don't. Is that well? You could. I don't know. Belly breathe, but it seems like it just seems to be
I'd be
just all
curious.
here in the beginning.
First thing I
until you
do when
develop
my kid comes out, adduction drop right away. Make sure he's neutral. If he's neutral, infrasternal angle, we're all set. We're in good shape.
I'll have to review
Then
the
boot
videos.
camp starts for the NBA. But so narrow infrasternal angle, that's what we're looking for. So
Yes.
So for getting the air back there,
Yeah.
this
On the
area-
left.
On the left, yeah. That's where you get so if someone has like the wing scapula type thing, that's due to lack of air coming back.
yeah, so the wing scapula. I'm glad you mentioned that. The wing scap is. The misconception with the wing scap. Yeah, and we
remember you
did
did it
this.
on
We
your
did
summer,
this.
yeah.
Yeah. So the wing scap. The misconception is that the standard fix for a winged scap is eyes wise tees, low trap, rhomboids, right? Has that ever worked for anybody?
Tried it for
Has
3
I mean,
years.
how many times are we going to do tees, Ys, retractions, calling it fix for for a winged scap.
All I do
and
is get neck spasms when I treat it.
yeah, it does. It's like I don't understand. It doesn't work at all, right? So the theory behind that is that your scap has moved away from your rib cage. But what really happened, you got it, man. You got it. What really happened was that your rib cage moved away from the scap into that because you went into that.
Extension.
Nope. Infrasternal angle. The infrasternal angle. The wide infrasternal angle. You've externally rotated your ribs, and they are going away from your scap. Your scap never moved. Your scap doesn't have a license to drive. It just stayed there.
Ribs went like that.
Right, and so that would mean that the low trap has nothing to do with that, right? So all you have to do in order to move it back is just inhale into your, exactly. You have to pull your ribs back, and you're going to do that via serratus. If you ever go up onto a wall and just stand up on a wall, I did this exact thing with Timmy. We put our back on the wall, and you just feel it. Like everybody's got winged scaps, right? You just feel it. I put my back on the wall, and you can feel it. All you do, get a little mini squat, and just reach. I don't care. You don't have to breathe. You don't have to do any of that crap. Just reach for like 10 seconds. Get back on there. It'll be flush, and that's because you've used your serratus to pull your rib cage back. That's all it is. So when we're talking winged scaps, your scap never moved away from your rib cage. Your rib cage moved away from your scap. That make sense?
That was revolutionary when I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you serious? Why didn't anyone ever talk about that before?
Yeah, guys, you ever look at the low trap? That thing's got no juice to do anything. That you are not pulling. You're not. I'm benching. I don't bench that much anymore, but I'm benching like 185, and I got a 2.5 to get my low trap. Are you kidding me?
2.5.
A simple understanding of how fascia realigns along repetitive lines of stress will tell you that you have no chance with a 2.5 Y with a retraction at the top to outdo this 185 that I'm pumping out for my Friday workouts. You know.
Tim's discovery?
Yeah.
Basically, what I've been trying to do for the past 3 years is just wrong.
We've all been there.
Yeah. So the idea of thoracic on T on S, so thoracic moving on the scapula rather than the scapula. I mean, it happens both ways at all times, but push the thoracic back into the scapula is what's going to fix shoulders and pretty much everything else, rather than trying to move the scapula on the rib cage. But again, it's always bad lateral. Everything happens as a feedback system. So it's never like just one thing. It's always everything's working together. So you always have to keep that in mind. Yes.
Question about please, Andy.
Ladies first?
Yeah.
All right, so when I'm doing that, sometimes I go into internal rotation of the shoulder cheating. How do you prevent doing that and really getting the serratus to connect to the...
Push against something, I suppose.
Because I have all those people with the high breath, they all go into the upper traps and the...
Oh, that's hard. So yeah, you'll see that even when they're pushing. Like standing up, they'll do it.
They can't let
I
it
don't
go.
think they're grounded. That's one issue. If they're ungrounded, if they're not in pronation with their feet, they're going to be using a lot of neck. If they don't have ZOA already, you know, if they're still forward on the left, if their pelvis is rotated forward, they're still probably not going to turn off those upper traps. So I don't know. You can do it on a hands and knees. I think a lot of people will still do this, but again, this is where you use your hands for references. Put my hand on their lower back and say, as you inhale, push into my hand with your rib cage or your spine. They should feel that and be able to do that. If you leave them to their own devices, this is what they'll probably, if they're on their hands and knees, you'll get them to round.
Yeah.
And just rounding them should really put them in the correct position to do what we need.
Okay.
But they'll still want to do this. Like they'll still either rock backwards with their body, or as they inhale, their rib cage will move up towards their head, which is obviously not what you want. So hands, go to massage therapy school if you have to. Spend $9,000 just to put your hand on someone's back legally. No, I took it right. So just put your hand, use it as a reference, so they know where to be, because they don't know what it feels like. They don't know what the hell you're talking about. Again, when I used to ask people, "Do you feel your hamstring?" Like, yeah. And I say, and I started to get suspicious. Like, point to where you feel it. they're pointing their quad. I mean, most people don't know anything about anything, so they have no clue what you're talking about.
Wow.
So, but
All
feeling,
right.
but when they feel something, it gives them a location, something to strive for, something purposeful. Otherwise, it's just like, I don't know what the hell you're
So
talking
you're
about.
saying do it, but it depends on like maybe work on the feet, the hamstring, the brat, and then like is there an
Well, I
order?
think I don't know if standing is harder than hands and knees. It, to me, it would seem like it
I
because
think
there's
so.
less to like the ground gives you more reference.
Sure.
So I would always, in order to round back and breathe and try to get this opened up, I would always start in the hands and knees. I think that's the easiest position because they have two things. They're pushing with their hands into the wall, their legs are on the, I'm sorry, into the wall, into the ground, their legs are on the ground, and you're making them round.
What about wrist issues when they can't do that?
That's problematic. Well, that's
fist. I've done
yeah, I've
fist.
done fists also. Yeah, even for myself, I do that.
I think what I would know on that topic is that most people they're just not going to feel the posterior mediastinum stimulus. It's going to be really hard for them to get. Also, their serratus, like what is a serratus to most people, right? And what I find, just like in the hard exhale comment of like what's more important first, I would love nothing more than for them to feel their posterior mediastinum expand. So I manipulate the system and I will have them lean off of something as opposed to reaching, because now I'm like screwing with it. I've shortened the serratus, I pulled the rib cage back, and now if I contract the same side abs, air's going to go back there. So now if I go to the doorway, and what you'll see is they'll say lean off the doorway and they'll hip hinge, right? Because they don't have that, they can't get air there. So then you want them to squat it down so that their thorax is right up in like what's it, parallel to the wall. And then when I lean back, I've shortened the serratus, so I've simulated, I haven't reached, but I've simulated the reach. And then I exhale, get these abs right here. Now I've diverted the air. I've diverted the air to the back. And if I can do this the right way, that's when that thing will open up. So for somebody who can't feel that, who's not doing too much upper trap, flip the script on them and have them lean off it. There are some PRI doorway stretches. Like I've even done a thing where I'll put them in a one-arm dumbbell row position, and we make sure push.
TRX straps are great.
Yeah,
Just have them lean
TRX
down
is awesome.
and just fall towards the floor.
You
You have
can-
them breathe.
yeah.
TRX straps can be used in a lot of different ways for this type of stuff.
So you just get them into that position, like a nice neutrally PRI position, ribs down. I'll press it. So I'll go one arm dumbbell row position. I'll press into the, where you got like one knee up like this, one hand's down, and I'm rowing. I'll push in with that left hand that's down, and I'll take like an 80, and I'll just hang, right? I'm just literally all I'm doing is I'm just forcing my serratus to contract, and then I'll just get those abs on that same side, and now I got 80 pounds of pressure here, of reaching pressure, which it isn't actually reach. Like we're not really doing it here, but we're getting them to sense what it feels like to get there. And now they'll at least have that reference of what that feels like. It's like people who have neck, like I woke up, I had this kick in my neck, I can't even turn to my right. Done. You expand posterior mediastinum, gone. And if you've ever had those kinks in your neck, if somebody can do that, pay them all of the money. Like that is like the king of getting somebody out of pain, because that thing will last for 5 days, and it's that. It's I can't expand them so extend. I can't expand anything, and you're not going to get it with your serratus that you've never turned on, but you might be able to get it with an 80-pound dumbbell or leaning off of a door.
There's a million ways to do it. Once you actually know what you're doing, you realize you can do these things.
Yeah, and that's just like
Any
made up.
situation.
Like I just make that up, and it's just understanding the principles of what we're doing, right? What do you got?
Another question. In regards to the amount of thoracic grounding, is too much thoracic grounding
Yeah, 100%.
counterproductive?
100%. So I think when we're talking flexion, we're trying to produce flexion. I see it all the time where it's just like, boom, like I've done it, right? And what I always see is like around T8, they always it's like a mountain. There's a peak, there's a summit, and that's not what you're looking for. You're looking for a really nice general rounding of the back. So all I would say is exhale all your air, and what's that going to produce? That's going to produce posterior tilt of the pelvis, ribs are coming down, and then I say reach, and that's it. Don't force anything. Get it from there. Exhale everything. Reach forward. Now you have a nice generalized rounding as opposed to this like forced flexion into your spine when it's not even like you look at these people and it's almost like a straight C spine or a straight lumbar spine, and then it's like this like weird like small moment of flexion, but nothing else is really flexed. There's no like posterior tilt of the pelvis. That's I think that's where they were like as PRI just becomes like generalized and like thrown out to the masses, you know, and we're just, you know, and again, time and place, like we're doing the best we can. Like if you're working with a team setting, and I was speaking to somebody who works with baseball players the other day, and he said that, you know, he gets his guys for 45 minutes at a time. All right, like fine, like we'll deal with that, but that's not what we're looking for. The real deal, the 2-hour session, those 60 tests and all that stuff, really nice, consistent flexion throughout the spine. Agree?
Yeah, I always keep in mind it's respiration first, so let exhalation guide the flexion. Because you just don't want to do this because they call it like jamming your sternum down into your abdomen in a sense. You want exhalation to guide the system into flexion. That's really what you're trying to reestablish.
Right.
It's not like being flexion 24/7. It just means get back what you've lost over time. You've lost a pattern. You have to relearn how to do a movement that you have, first of all, no clue how to do it. You just think that you breathe. You never put any thought into it. Now you're asking them, well, you know, flex your spine.
Sure.
Just if you can just always keep that in mind, that the respiration is the key for spinal flexion through exhalation. That's why I always keep in my mind, let exhalation guide the spine into flexion and the ribs.
Yep. Yep. Question.
So kind of keeping with the whole the scap thing, and on a bigger picture is when you're doing specific styles of like training, like or if you're doing like a specific strength training stuff,
Right.
and you're doing more of like a low bar type squat, that's really kind of affecting that scapula. How does that compare to overall scapular health in the long run if you consistently do that?
You know, I don't think
That's
that.
something that I've been playing around with the low bar
You know what?
squat
I think
recently,
I think when
just
you squat, you
curious.
squat, right? I think like becoming a PRIE lift. You know, like what's the goal? Like you do jujitsu?
Yeah.
Okay, like you're trying to beat the hell out of people,
Yeah.
right? So, you know, like you gotta get strong, right? Like football training would be the one thing that would scare me a little bit because there's no PRI integration for a human freight train running you down, right? Like you have to, like I watched Clemson's football highlight video, and all these they got these big whatever. I've never even seen these machines in real life, and they're just like cranking their necks and like I'm like. From a PRI standpoint, you're like, no. But from a football standpoint, it's like, okay, like the concussion's a big deal. Like I don't think that actually prevents anything, but you know, you gotta put on the show. I'm with that. You gotta train for your sport. You gotta train for a refrigerator gentleman coming at full speed trying to obliterate you into. You ever see the video? Oh my God, guys, please, if you haven't seen this, the video of the. You know what? There's only one way to do this. There's only one way to do this. This is what scares me about football training right here, guys.
But like you were saying, it's just like a trade-off.
Yeah, you know what I mean. I'm like, you're doing the best you can. Like, I'm
saying
saying squat. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not even worried about
Yeah,
it. Like, squat as good as you can, and like trust that you're in a good position.
Mm-hmm.
Put yourself in a good position to succeed.
Yeah.
Who has seen this? Oh my God, you guys are in for the freaking best moment of your life.
Oh my God.
That ain't good enough. Come on, Joe. Thank you, baby. Thank you, baby. Damn mouth. That's what I'm talking about, baby. You gotta make blood come to the mouth. You can't just smack me and don't hit me hard. That's bullshit. When you hit him, you hit that mother. Let's get that ass. Let's go.
Yeah, I don't think PRI would work on that.
Yeah, so Mr. Henderson, I'm gonna want you to take this balloon and blow this up and really, really reach, and that's the guy.
Yeah.
You know, you gotta prepare for freaking Henderson over here, who's about to light you on fire, right? So I think from your perspective, it's like me personally, I don't care.
Yeah.
Squat. Right, do your thing. You know, in your training, like I'm saying, like get a lot of obliques, get a lot of hamstrings, put yourself in a good position. You know, train the right muscles, train the right stuff, but squat. You know, I think the people. This is the one that gets me. The full reach before the deadlift and that full exhale. Have you guys seen this? People walk up to the trap bar and they're like, and then they trap bar deadlift 435. right? And I'm like, dude, why are you trying to get parasympathetic before the most sympathetic thing
Yeah.
ever, right? Do you as soon as you stop out of that motion, that's gone, right? You're standing, your body is preparing for 400 pounds on a trap bar deadlift. You're not getting anywhere with that. Your brain is like, I see what you're doing here, buddy. No chance, right? Because it's survival. So for you, I'm saying just put yourself on, train the right stuff. You know, if you have like an injury, something that's nagging, go with that. But I'm not. I'm, you know,
but you can do, like you said, like other things to help supplement what else is going on,
Exactly.
like the abs.
Exactly.
Stuff like
Really,
that.
like warm-ups and cool-downs.
Yeah.
Dry stuff anywhere in the
Exactly.
rest, I mean, whatever you want to.
Exactly.
All right, guys, take a gander up at this image here, and just drink that in for a second. This is my work right here.
Okay.
This was actually the last game before I got fired, so we might know why. But so this is a warm up now, and I don't intend to make any of these guys, you know, seem like they're not hard workers, because actually each and every single one of them are pretty hard workers. But these are when I was there, these were all guys on the Lakers, right? So these are NBA players. The guy far left on his cellular device, that's Thomas Robinson, and he is all-time Kansas great. Like, he was like runner-up, player of the year, number 2 pick in the draft. Didn't really pan out too well in the NBA, but you know, great guy. You know, freak athlete, right? Right here at the bottom, this is Brandon Ingram, number 2 pick in the draft. He's actually having a pretty nice year. He was pretty active in the trade talks this week for the Lakers.
It's gonna make him feel great.
Yeah, he's super hyped. But you know, I actually won't go there. But so that's he's actually probably working the hardest in this picture. Right up in the middle, that's Tyler Ennis, Syracuse, great. He's as you can see, he's paying great mind to rolling out his right glute in that picture. I'm pretty sure he's looking up the exact instructions on how to do it. If you guys take a gander at my guy all the way back, Julius Randle, I'm not sure he's not aware that he's not currently in his bed, and he's, you know, getting down to business. And this is our last game of the season actually. Here we're in Golden State at the hotel weight room. Actually, the hardest working guy in this picture is the gentleman on the shoulder press machine. And then you got, on the far right, you got Larry Nance Jr. is on the Cleveland Cavaliers right now, and he's probably, I'm sure he's looking up, you know, how to find good footwear for his workout, or how to properly internally rotate his legs for this position. And my point here is, and this is the huge disconnect that I see in the world that we live in. And these are the guys who, quote, made it, right? And these are the guys who, you know, my whole life I remember being at basketball camps and everybody preaching to me that you have to work as hard as you possibly can to get to this level, right? And so I remember my coaches always saying, like, if you want to make the NBA, you want to go to the beach with your friends, you won't make it. You want to go to the movies with your friends, you won't make it. And I remember my friends would call me up, hey Sean, we're going to the beach. And I was like, yes, this is my moment, right? Like, nope, sorry guys. And then I go out and I work out my basketball, right? And like, I'm not joking. I'm not joking. I was like, this is it. This is it. This is like that peer pressure they talked about in the DARE program. And like I really thought this was my moment. And I worked. I put so much effort into becoming a good basketball player. So I was like, I said this last week. Every birthday, you get your birthday cake. You time to blow out your candles, right? Make a wish, but don't tell anybody because it won't come true. And I always wished every single birthday, my entire life, every single time I picked up a dandelion in summer and I had to make a wish. I'm not joking you. Every single time, throw a penny in the mall water fountain. Every single time, I wish to make the NBA. I wish to make the NBA. My career goes on. I ended up being a strength and conditioning coach in the NBA, and my first thought was, damn it, I should have been more specific, right? I made it, but not as a player. And what I started to see, and over my time as a coach at that level, was that these guys like that, those are the guys who are getting buckets, guys dropping 40 a game, right? And the guys who are in the weight room all the time, working really hard, these are the guys who are getting cut, traded. We had a guy traded mid-flight when I was with the Lakers. We were on the plane and he got traded in the middle of the flight. That was awkward. and that guy was a huge, like, great hard worker. And it's like, well,
everything that we're preaching, is that really the way to do it? Like, is that actually how you make it to the top? Is that how you become an elite athlete? That Tim Tebow thing of hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard? Really? Right? I once, one of the great fortunes I had when I was working at Quinnipiac, I don't know if you ever had this opportunity, but Ray Allen used to come down all the time. Were you ever there when that?
No.
So our coach was good friends with Ray, and he would come down and like train for a training camp with us. And this is like the best 3-point shooter, well, for now of all time. And he would come down, and I'm like in awe. Like we walked into him. I walked in the locker room. He was sitting there. I literally remember he had golden earphones, and I was like, oh, that's sick. And I walked in there, and I was like, hey man, what's up? I'm Sean. And he's just like, hey, what's up? I'm Ray. And I was like, what's that? I didn't catch that. And so like I'm like in awe, like watching him go about it. And at the end, he would always give us like a little speech, you know, whatever. And I remember asking him one time, I was like, Ray, how many shots a day you shoot, right? And he's like, I was like, get ready. I was like, this guy at this moment, he's made more 3-point shots than anybody in the history of the NBA, in the history of basketball, right? And he was just like, none. And I was like, what do you mean, none? Like I was expecting him to say like 1,000. And he's like, dude, I'm like 34. I've been playing basketball since I was 6. I know how to shoot a basketball. I just get back, get my shot, get my stroke back a little bit before the game, or a little bit before training camp, and I'm good to go. And I'm like mind blown, right? And I'm the guy who's like, I shoot 400 a day. I need to make it 600. I need to make it 700 because that's how I'm going to make it. But in reality, what we're looking at in this picture, right, are freaks of nature, right? We're looking at people who are if you adduction drop these guys, they're going to be pretty clean, right? And that's because there is a huge neurological component to all of this. You can't, like, the people that really work hard, myself, if you had put me on the table in college, I'd be PEC out the ass, right? I'd be bilaterally extended up top, bilaterally extended down below, and that's because I wanted it so bad, right? Yeah, I mean, these guys like it, but they don't really care that much, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, they care, but, you know, I don't want to say that they don't care as much, but, like, they don't care as much as I did. Like, I was hell-bent on becoming an NBA player, and my body, my skills paid the price because reference centers of people in the stands, it was such a big deal to me that when that reference came into my head, I'm no longer neutral, right? And position is power, right? Position is function. If my body is in a good position, well, I used to go play basketball at fitness rec center in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I would do some PRI when I was first learning it. And when I would do it, like right afterwards, I could dunk so much better. Like literally, like way better. Like I felt like, I'm sure it wasn't, but I felt like I could dunk with my teeth, right, at the time. And that was because my position was power, and I made that, right? I created that situation. And when you become neurologically in a different spot, you can no longer perform at the highest of levels. So when we talk about training, like that's why this PRI stuff is a big deal, because it's going to cover that neurological side. A lot of these other modalities are just talking about, you know, I have a lack of dorsiflexion and I need to force feed dorsiflexion down my throat. Right, I'm going to stand up against a wall and I'm going to jam my knee into that wall as many times as I possibly can until my body says enough. Screw your ligaments. Now you got dorsiflexion if you really want it so bad. That guy right there in the white Adidas on the far right, the slam dunk contest participant, the 6'7" guy who can jump completely out of the gym, 0 degrees of dorsiflexion. 0. Vince Carter, 0 degrees of dorsiflexion. And I'm supposed to tell my guys to get dorsiflexion. Like we're supposed to like say like that's bad. That guy's not doing it well. Vince Carter's like 42. He's never been hurt like ever, and I'm supposed to say that he's at risk for injury, right? Like that's just the objectivity of all of this stuff, and it's like seeing the fact that the neurological component of this is much greater than the fact that he doesn't have ankle dorsiflexion. Right? It's seeing the entire picture. And then when we're talking about like working with athletes and we're talking about getting somebody, you know, I think it changes the mantra of what strength and conditioning and training really is. Like if we're trying to get somebody to their genetic potential, like you have to pay way more mind to their neurological system than you have to pay mind to their mental toughness on a deadlift or something, right? And that involves like if you work with young kids, that involves at that age That involves getting them to be able to expand their posterior mediastinum when they're young, because the further away you go from that, reference centers, the further away, the more connections that you build away from that. When they come see me, now I got a problem. Right now, I have to undo all of your work because you spent so much time working on mental toughness and that side of it, but you paid no mind to the fact that movement is performance. Movement is their position is their power, and maybe you have a mentally tough athlete, but now he can't jump, or now he can't run fast because he's got no position. So there has to be. I think that's where strength and conditioning. If I go to. If I come back here, I think it's important to understand that this is from a real world example standpoint. Like, I didn't make this up, and what I think to be as a strength and conditioning coach, I think the weight room is badly misunderstood from that perspective. I think if you don't understand this, if you don't understand the way that this rib cage is moving, if you don't, or how it's supposed to move and how you can restore it, and same thing with your hips, I think you are trotting down the wrong path. I think you are trotting down the path of like if this is their genetic ceiling, you'll cap them right here because you'll never let them get that function. Now, of course, that we live in the real world, and somebody comes into you, and maybe they don't care, maybe they only care about having a six-pack. Okay, that's fine. Like, but that. Now you know that you've left that on the table, and hopefully now they know that they've left that on the table. And I think like that is like my mission as a performance like consultant, is that performance is like, that's high level performance. Those are the best athletes in the world, right? Best athletes in the world, and that's their warm up. And strength coach, good job. And I mean it, not just patting their ego. Nice work. And I'm always careful of what they say to them. I don't ever talk about basketball or whatever their sport is, because what's up here can change them. One of the examples I like to give is, if I were to have somebody, we'll take a massage table out here, nice quiet environment. We got a lot of nice people around here, pretty comfortable. If I were to take this massage table out and adduction drop you right here and give you your PRI analysis, pretty, I mean, there's some things, but there's a good chance you'd be close to neutral, or as close to neutral as you're going to get, right? If I take that same massage table, stick it out in the middle of Broadway right now, 32 degrees, taxis whizzing by, people flipping you off, homeless people coming up asking for change, you're probably not going to be neutral because you're going to be rabid, right? So from a neurological perspective, where are the people that you work with, right? Are the people, when they come to see you, are they neurologically right here for their adduction drop, or neurologically in the middle of Broadway? And that matters. Their environment matters. So when you're around somebody, you have to literally create that environment. You have to literally include everything in the environment matters. About what it looks like. You have to appeal to their senses. What does it look like? What does it sound like? What music is on in the gym? For me, I need to have Kenny Chesney on when I lift. I have to have it. Otherwise, I don't like it. And I will have more access to my hamstrings when the Ches is playing, right? If I have to listen to Migos, my hamstrings go bye-bye. And you can't have that, right? Like, that's bad performance. Now, you're at Equinox. Well, you actually might control the music, do you?
No, unfortunately.
Okay, so you don't have access to it, and in that situation, you're like, whatever, like, I understand it, like, I get it. It's not ideal, but I know it. I know that that's produced. So maybe I need to be heavier on the visual side of it. Understand that the visual component is a really big part of it, much bigger than the auditory. So maybe I drive that into it a little bit more. Somebody you're trying to get deadlifts in. We talked about this last week. If you're trying to get deadlifts in, they can't find their hamstrings. Move them over to the window. Because natural light, being able to see an expansive environment is really helpful in that situation. All of a sudden, maybe they'll start feeling their hamstrings. How the gym smells is a really big deal. How you smell is a really big deal. Do you have coffee breath? That plays a role. Have you not showered? Did you just work out? That plays a role. And I think like creating that entire environment is such a monster deal. And I always say, when I've worked in baseball, the way that I knew that I was doing a good job is that during a rain delay, the guys would hang out in the weight room. And that's when I knew I created a nice environment. And I knew that whenever it was time to get some work done in there, it wasn't like a place that they just did not want to be. It was not like they had access that they ordinarily wouldn't have access if I was just, one of the meathead strength coaches just screaming and barking down the throat and I'm a dictator and this is how it's going to be. I was very lax, very carefree. Sure, you want to lift now? Fine. No, you don't want to lift? Oh, like in baseball, drinking a beer is a pretty big deal, right? So if you want to drink beer, just put it in a different cup. Okay, I just don't want to see it, and that is creating a good environment. And I think that gets misinterpreted in PRI, right? If I did your adduction drop out in the middle of the Broadway, my results tell me that you need hamstrings. Do you need hamstrings, or do you need to just come inside because it's freezing, right? What do you got?
With the music, is it just something that puts you in a happy place or gets you amped? Like,
Well, it depends. It depends on what you're going for. So, for example, this is what I suggest that you guys. I'm gonna put this video in the Slack channel. Did you guys all sign up for that? I sent an email out. Did everybody get that email?
Yeah.
Okay. If you haven't already, I sent an email out yesterday. If some of you guys, I already had you on the list. So I just transferred you over. You might not have gotten an email about it. I just put you in it. But the Slack channel on Slack, I'll include this video. When you go, hold on, this is even better. Who's walking home? Anybody? Anybody? A subway? Anything? Oh, okay, great. Okay. When you leave here, if you have Apple Music or anything, go onto Apple Music and type in "Time" by Hans Zimmer. Okay. You will thank me later. You will literally feel like you're walking around the city and you're Batman. It literally feels like you're Batman when you walk around the city to this. Like that would be my suggestion. Everybody, when you leave here, go walk that way. It's like Wall Street's right over there. It's like these cool buildings and stuff. And just like walk slowly and just listen to this. I'm not joking. You're going to feel like you're Batman. I've compiled these lists on my Apple Music that show that have different emotions, right? So we'll just bring it up here actually. If you come to my Apple Music, and if you have Apple Music, you can actually come in and I think you can like look people's stuff up. So I have all of these score playlists. So if I want to get neutral, come on, right? Home Alone, right? Because Christmas is the best, makes me neutral. It's Mike's reference center to that. Context, Christmas, presents, family, chocolate chip cookies, love it, let's do it. That's what I remember when I think of Home Alone, right? My childhood, all that stuff.
Unless you hate Christmas, doesn't that?
But
hate your family.
But that's a real freaking thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, smell and sound are the two things that strengthen, solidify memories more than anything else, I believe. Mm-hmm. So put the wrong song. Until I let go a lot of things in my early to mid 30s, there were songs I could not listen to. Like there's a lot of people. I teach dancing, and it's Latin, so Latin music, and I don't really know what they're saying. It's big songs, and I'll sometimes have a student be like, I can't listen to this. Can you turn it off? Because I don't know what the words are. I just dance to the beat and everything. But you put the wrong song on someone, and they might not even know why, but they're just putting out a depressed mood. Like now, it's interesting. Mm-hmm. I can listen to the same songs I couldn't listen to because I associated with troubling times in my young teenage years. I can now listen to joyfully, but I had to let go of emotional baggage that I was holding on to in order to enjoy these songs. So I have a list of what I call transcendental music that just, to me, just lift my emotions to such a degree that it'll make me cry sometimes. And I don't ask why, just it is what it is. But it's absolutely fascinating what music can do to someone, either in a good way or a bad way. Because if you put the wrong song on for someone, I remember in high school, this horrible "I Would Walk 5,000 Miles" song.
Oh, yeah.
My God. I know this is the early 90s, and that was the last song I heard before I had to take a math exam. And I was horrible at math to begin with.
Right.
But I could not get that song out of my head for the life of me. And it's just got this horrible, repetitive, "I would walk 500 miles an hour." And then I could not think of anything during that math exam. So music is a huge deal.
Right.
Like I wouldn't go with Kenny Chesney. I would go with if I wanted ballads, I would go with Jovi. Ballads because he's more of my time.
Look, as long as it's a slow jam, I can deadlift.
I can slip now. I go higher than
Yeah, you do.
Music is a huge deal.
But and I think that's the importance of the individuality of it, right? It's understanding that what's like he puts Slipknot on. If he were to come lift with me and he was like, "Yo, let's put on Slipknot." I have a friend who likes to listen to hardcore, that
Yeah.
kind of music, right? And every time, like
Death
we
metal.
and we have a playlist whenever we're going in for a tough lift, and every time his songs come on, I'm just like, oh god, right? That has a reaction, like and it may not have a huge reaction, but it's going to vary from person to person. That he gets hyped when that comes on, I don't. And so it's very individualized. It's very different. If you're talking about if you're
volume of the
if you're in a
It's too
situation
loud,
where
I'm
you
not
have a
gonna be around.
one-on-one, like having an understanding of what they like is really, really useful, because now you'll understand. You'll have another anchor. It's like another hamstring. It's like a small little hamstring that you can help pull them back into their position. Like it really is. And that's just understanding the neurological component of it. And if you want to go even further with it, we got people here in New York City, and if you say even in my building, I live on the 14th floor in Hoboken, and I can hear like sirens and stuff throughout the night, and comes in and what is our reference to a siren? Danger. Right? So every time we hear siren, our brain just has a little reaction to the fact that are we in danger right now? So
Even
if you're
if you're
in
sleeping.
if you're in a
Your
spot
brain
where you
still
can
knows.
hear that, that is
it
going to
does.
contribute to the fact that you can't sleep, or contribute to the fact that you are a sympathetically driven person. Like that is the entire scope of what we're dealing with here, and that's why the PRI side of it is so important from a performance standpoint, because if you're not looking at that, you are limiting the genetic potential of them, because that all plays a role. You can't just generalize everything, right?
I would say one other thing. Have you ever heard there's a book called Highly Sensitive People, or The Highly Sensitive Person? These are people who have overactive nervous system. I'm one of them. But it's only like 10 to 20% of the population, so most people are like, they don't understand why I don't like being bright lights or around loud noise. And I didn't either, I just knew I didn't like it, and that some people have highly reactive nervous systems. It doesn't mean they're over anxious, they're actually not. They're just they might seem more reserved, but on the inside they're freaking like completely tense. So putting them in the wrong environment, and just because no one would think that I'm a highly sensitive person if you just met me normally. So you can't judge, you might be an athlete. That person might be a highly sensitive person just because they look a certain way and they can jump a certain height and run. Don't assume that they're this extroverted, outgoing, excitable person. They might not be. Like I have to wear, if I'm teaching a dance class for 2 hours, I'm putting on an act. I'm being energetic because that's what it demands. But I go home, the classical music goes on, I read my philosophy books, and I try to go to sleep. Like a lot of people have to fit into environments that they're not really comfortable with. And that's why it is so fast. And the neurological aspect is absolutely huge. Like you can't judge someone by what they look like, and just because they're big and muscular, assume that, they must love this type of activity. They might not. I think a lot of those guys probably want them to have to worry about as little as possible.
That's exactly what.
So don't be like, you're not testing cleanly. Let's get more. And now they're thinking about, shit, is this going to hold me back?
Yeah.
Now they've got something on their mind. Like for a lot of people, generally in life, you want to worry about as little as possible, so you can actually not be too self-aware.
Right.
Like on the basketball court, not be just lose yourself in the game, get in the flow. The more you ask people to worry about stuff, the worse it is. I think some people are in pain because they're worried that they have a big issue, and then they realize,
Right.
you just can't exhale, and they relax. So a lot of pain is tension-based because they're fearful of
Right.
something.
And then just really quick carrying off of that is this is where PRI comes in, is because it is the greatest of all time of unlocking triplanar movement. Like we talked about with some of these other things, is most modalities are just forcing movement down your throat, and they're not really addressing the fact of why you have a movement restriction. They're just looking at it and just going right at the symptom as opposed to the cause. They have the best demonstration of what our biological requirements are to beautiful movement, and that is when we talk about athletes, people who can perform at the highest level. This is the people that can maintain that movement the best, and the most. In my experience, in 7+ years of working with professional athletes, the people who are the most explosive, the pitchers who can throw the hardest, the guys who can jump the highest, if you test them out, PRI, they are usually the cleanest. They are not the people that are PEC. They're not the people that are very limited, very tight people, very loose. they add up to the table. Everything goes really, really smoothly when you do that. And it's not because they do their 90-90s and their adductor pullbacks. It's because from a neurological standpoint, whatever has happened in their childhood, whatever currently happens, I think my favorite example is always professional athletes blowing their money. How many people have heard it? There's an ESPN 30 for 30 on it, right? And my response to that is there is no off switch, right? If you don't care about shooting free throws and crunch time in front of 20,000 people, you don't care about how much money you're making rain at the club, right? There's no off switch. You are who you are. That's why they test clean, because neurologically they're just free spirits, right? I think that's the appreciation. Like I think it's wrong for people to want you to be an assassin on the court, but be a conservative investor, right? Like I don't think you're appreciating the reality of what you're asking. If I know my brother was a professional pitcher, pitched for the Boston Red Sox. And I remember watching him pitch at Fenway Park. He comes in the game, first batter he's going to face is Mike Trout, right? And I'm like, if that's me on the court on the mound, that ball's going in the dugout. Okay, it's going up into the stands. I might be throwing it out of Fenway Park because I'm so freaking nervous. I may not be able to move. I may just have to call the catcher out, intentionally walk him or something. Like I can't move. But my brother's like hitting the glove, and I'm like, how do you do that, man? Like, and that's just because when he's in that position, like he's not like my mindset is the normal person. My brother's an idiot. Right? Like he's just like a free guy. Like, oh, let's go. Mike Trout's up. Sweet. Like I'm just like, and that's the norm. That's the normal person, right?
That's the interesting thing.
Yeah.
That is actually normal. So people who, I don't remember what book was it? Oh, it was one of the first neurology books I ever read. But he was saying, the author was saying, by Daniel Goleman, social intelligence or emotional intelligence?
Emotional intelligence.
Yeah, and it was like mind-blowing when I read it, so I realized I wasn't crazy, because most people do ruminate about their social lives when their mind's not occupied by something, because I thought we all think we're the only one that does this. Of course, you're not. Everyone does it, and then it's like, oh, everyone does it. But he said, people who have a hard time functioning in front of groups, or going up to the chalkboard in front of a class, that's the normal. Right. That's normal. People who struggle with that, that's normal. The people who don't struggle with that, that's not normal. And that enables them to do stuff that most of us can't do. Right. It's like maintaining composure under extreme duress. Right. That's not normal. People that can do that, we all admire them in a sense, but they're the not normal people. So everything that I was struggling with about myself, I can't do this, I can't do this, there's too much self-awareness, I fold under pressure, whatever it is, I realized, that's actually the norm. But you don't think of it like that, because we compare ourselves to the people who, can do it. Yep. So your brother's completely not.
My brother's a freak.
He's a freak.
Yeah, and he's a freak on multiple levels.
Which
we won't go there.
serves him very well in that life. But you never know.
That's realistically, that's how you make it to that level. Like you have to have that free spirit, that not caring, and it's those things that your parents, that your coaches are saying, where it's like, you have to want it so bad if you want to make it to the NBA.
That just creates more anxiety.
What example are you using, right? I hear this a lot. Oh, Kobe, right? Well, Kobe. Oh, that's who you're going to bring up? Kobe Bryant, one of the greatest players of all time. You got one. Okay? How many else you got? Michael Jordan? Like the majority of these guys, this is what it is. And it's not bad. I test my brother out. I never touched my brother. I didn't even know PRI for a while. And I test my brother out. It's clean as a whistle. I'd like to think that I'm great and that our off-season workouts are as good as it comes, but I'm smart enough to know that they're not. There's nothing special about it. It's because he goes up there and we're just like hanging out. It's like, yeah, let's do these RFEs, and we, the cross behind lunge. We used to call them bowler's lunges, and now we call them bowler's lunges because he doesn't know how to read. And it's like, it's funny, ha ha ha. We're laughing, we're working out, and it is what it is. And then he goes home and he plays Fortnite, and like that's how it goes. Like that's how we want to talk about high level athletics. Yeah, you want to talk about performing in front of 20,000 people. Like your reference centers better be on freaking point. Because if you're nervous out there, good luck, right? That's where you want to see people get exposed. Stand in front of 20,000 people and try to do a fine motor movement, right? Like that's like my ultimate mission right now. is to show people that high-level athletics is not what anybody thinks it is. Like the best players in the world, not even close. You hardworking guys, like, and I don't want to say that they're not hardworking because these guys absolutely get their work done. But neurologically, freaks, different kind of dudes. You know, this is just. It just is what it is, and I just want people to be able to appreciate that. From a neurological standpoint, if you do want to learn more, next week I'm actually doing this on the neurology of an athlete. We'll go all sorts of different places there. So if that interests you, you just go to the same website that you guys signed up with to get here. Same way, put your name, email address in, good to go. And at that website right there, I have a full-fledged neuro course about all of this. So with that said, let's take a break, and then Neil's going to bring us home. We'll come back in, let's say it's 12:13 right now. Let's come back we'll go 12:30, 15 minutes.
Thank you.
Shake it off, shake it off. Never.